Okay, so thanks again and very much everyone for joining today's webinar. Webinar is entitled Centralise Your Log Management with SolarWinds Log Manager for Orion. In today's webinar, we're going to cover a few things in terms of the agenda. So let's just quickly bring you into the agenda if we can. Just a quick introduction to myself and my colleague Mark Roberts. Mark heads up the technical side of the company. He's technical director of Prosperon Networks. Myself, I'm the bald one with the grey beard. I look after the sales and marketing side of the company. So just a quick introduction, if we can, just to cover off the agenda, what we'll be covering off today. So we're going to quickly start by, for those of you that are new to Prosperon, just giving a quick introduction, not too many slides at all, just to give you an idea of what we're all about and how we got involved with the vendor. Then we'll move into looking at different kinds of log management solutions that SolarWinds offers, because if some of you know the vendor quite well, you know there's a few different tools with the name log in them. So what we're going to do is differentiate the different products there to give you a proper grasp of what each of those products will do. We're going to have a few slides and just looking at Log Manager in general, in terms of some of the important aspects to consider. And then Mark's going to move us into the live demo, which is a really fun and interesting bit. We're going to have some polls also in here. Some of you who've joined us in the past know that we do like to make these sessions interactive. So I think there's 2 or 3 polls during these sessions where we'd like to get some of your valuable feedback. And right at the end of the session, we're going to cover off some of those questions that hopefully you guys will raise. The way to raise those questions is in the panel of GoToMeeting. If you look inside there, you can start pushing some questions in there, and some of them we might answer on the fly as we go through. Some of them we might wait until the end of the session to cover off. Okay, so let's very quickly start with that introduction, as I promised. So we got involved with Prosperon, with SolarWinds, beg your pardon, right at the inception. So that's going back 2006 with SolarWinds, and you'll understand, some of you, that a great deal has changed with the vendor in those last sort of 12, 13 years. This has made our sort of philosophy of the company change, rather, in terms of providing some real value-added services to those users of SolarWinds. So our very much our sort of company mission, in a way, is to make sure that these products are installed well and giving you the proper business benefits that you guys are needing from the various platforms that you have. So that's very much what we're about there. And some of our headline pieces you'll see there in terms of giving an understanding of where we fit. We're doing over 600 days of consultancy on SolarWinds platforms throughout the year. Those of you that are customers of us will be enjoying already our technical support provisions, and that's, in terms of numbers there, that's going up into some real meaty figures. The engineering base is growing all the time. We have all of our engineers are SolarWinds certified engineers. So you guys know that when we start doing some project work with yourselves in terms of improving, you know that's done with some firm, solid experience and education with the background. We do tend to work sometimes on security cleared sites. We have a number of engineers that have that SC clearance, so we can work on sensitive sites as well if any of you work in those kind of environments. We are very proud also to have 2 THWAC MVPs. For those of you that aren't aware of THWAC, that's the SolarWinds community site where lots of tips, tricks and shared ideas happen. Mark Roberts is one of our MVPs on this webinar. We have one other. That brings us into a little bit closer to SolarWinds as well, in terms of mentioning and pushing forward some of our ideas. And you'll see if some of you will be joining FlatCamp, which they hold once a year, and Mark's second on the left there in terms of his presence over there in Austin.
The slim, good-looking one, Matt. That was what you're supposed to say.
The slim, good-looking one is what I've been prompted to say. So yeah, we do have a very good, strong relationship with SolarWinds, and they are a listening kind of company, particularly with the THWAC community. They like to hear ideas from end users as well as their partners. Okay, so next slide on there, Mark. In terms of, let's start with a poll. Very interested from you guys to know in terms of what kind of solutions you are using already for the collection of logs and the management and analysis. So if you could take a moment just to help us, just to fill in some of those, we're going to leave a short gap for you to sort of participate.
Okay, so I'm seeing those answers coming in. Yeah, interesting. Yeah, pretty much what I'd be expecting to see. I think everyone's voted now.
Okay.
So if we just have a look at those results.
No great surprises, Mark, really, there, in terms of we've probably got a very heavy SolarWinds user base on this
Exactly
webinar.
That's pretty much what I was expecting to see. It'd be interesting to see if there's any questions along on this line, obviously with what SolarWinds are doing with the integration of logging of Log Manager for Orion, how people are they're going to use that compared to what's in there already.
Indeed. Okay, that's good feedback. So Mark, I'm going to hand over to you, I think, really here, and I'll interject along the way, but this is very much your...
Thank you. Yes, indeed. So we're going to be very quick through the slides. Just want to set the scene, get a bit of background in place for everyone, clearly in terms of SolarWinds having a number of log management solutions in their portfolio. I've kind of put three primary ones here. There's a slide in a minute where there's a few more listed, because there are a number of ways of dealing with this situation, and some of them have very specific functions. So you can see at the top there with regards to the first line, compliance. If your organization needs to have industry standard compliance, internal compliance, very much with security in mind, then the Login Event Manager is the standout piece. That's the bells and whistles. That's everything that you need to do to take Log Manager management to the next level and use it in an efficient way, because we're talking very, very large volumes of data. And very much a big part of that is the kind of sources you're talking about. So the demo today is going to be on the Log Manager for Orion, but that is going to ingest data from SysLog as a protocol, from SNMP traps as a protocol, and potentially from Windows event logs. I'll come back to why I say potentially later on. But if you have log data that you need to collect from maybe flat files, maybe from databases, maybe from web services, that's where Login Event Manager is going to come into play, because that has the capability of polling those, sucking that data in and making sense of it. And when I say making sense of it, it has a whole engine around understanding that this event message means this. It's a login failure versus a change process versus an AD activity. So from that point of view, as I say, there's a whole layer of intelligence focused on security, compliance, and multiple log sources. Now, when you're looking at what is going to be the right solution, another aspect to this is how much data you're going to be generating, how long you need to store it for. Because some of the solutions that we're talking about here are for archiving, therefore allowing you to store it for a long period of time, because again, going back to compliance, you may need to keep them. There may be a business need that you want to be able to go back and see what events happened 6 months ago. From that point of view, understanding the potential limitations, the suitability for certain solutions along this is going to be a key thing. And all of this, we are here to help you. If you are looking through this demo today and anything kind of comes to mind that you need assistance with, we're here to do that for you. And the last one on the list there is the visualization. Logs. If any of you have ever used any log system or reviewed log files, you'll know the pain and suffering that is involved in this. Because of that huge amount, and I'm talking millions and millions of event messages being generated a day potentially, the visualization is critical. Being able to sift through information, being able to go through individual messages, look at trends, look at correlation. Each of the solutions have their own strengths to fit the need that you're going to use the solution for. So any solution has to have good visualization to get through that information. So I've kind of mentioned a couple of challenges, so I'm not going to dwell too long on this slide, but certainly understanding, let's say, the volume, any regulation requirements that you have. Now, what we see often with our customers is that we have siloed entities. We have the network team maybe using one solution. We have a security team that require and have to have the SIEM solution, the security event management solution, such as LEM. And so from that point of view, is there a kind of whole big business driver that would maybe look at a refresh to see what is the right solution, and then understanding how each of those requirements are going to drive the need to choose the right solution. Now, what we're going to be looking at in more detail today during the demo is the fact that a lot of the solutions historically have not worked with monitoring data, the Orion platform, for many reasons. It's been kept as a kind of separate solution. So when you look at issues, maybe an interface going down, BGP neighbor changes, fan issues, that data may be being polled. But that data already also exists in the log and event data. And while you may get drawn to the fact that something's occurring, there's an issue, there's a performance outage, there's a service loss in your monitoring solution, the event data can very significantly increase the understanding of why and how and where, because that has much more information in it. It's in real time, and so is a really, really strong resource and an absolute necessity in any kind of monitoring coverage. So what we'll be looking at today is how Log Manager has improved and brought these two interfaces together to share that information and correlate data across each of them. So this is just a quick slide with regards to some of the core log management solutions from SolarWinds. So from that point of view, you can see that we've got Kiwi at the top. It's there as the free version, and that free version has some limitations in terms of archiving, functional capabilities, but hey, it's free. And that's why we see so much of it in the environments that we work with. The next one down is Kiwi. As I say, this is it's just a ubiquitous platform, whether the free or the paid for version, because it's so cheap. I'd be surprised if there's any organizations that we've ever gone to that does not have a Kiwi somewhere. Whether they know about it is one thing, but certainly we see it in very many places. So from that point of view, I would suggest that that is not just common because it's quick and it's cheap and it's easy to put in place, but also because it's pretty functional. There are limitations with it. You can see in terms of the volume of data, the fact that the interface is a bit dry, and by that I mean you've got long lists of events coming in, so using it can be a bit more painful. So then we start moving through the other solutions. Now, the Orion core functionality, again, I would suggest is very much in line with the capabilities of Kiwi. For customers that we speak to that have Orion, we will always suggest that Orion is used to send the log data through to. The primary reason is the fact that, again, we've kind of got a starting point of sharing log data with monitoring data. Log Manager for Orion just extends that and massively increases its capabilities. So if you are using, and 50% of you, according to the poll, are using SolarWinds Orion for your SysLog and Trap, hopefully this is going to be of particular interest so you can see the benefits of the additional features and functions provided in the new solution. Which brings us on to Log Manager for Orion. And here we can see that the interface has been very much designed for simplicity. We'll see the licensing is based on devices. There's no complexity. We're not having to look at log volumes. We're not having to understand how many individual log sources there are and how much they're sending a day. Very simple, very straightforward. One device that's sending log data is going to consume a license, and there are obviously many tiers available to cater for the number of devices that you own. And then the last one at the bottom there is this full-blown SIEM solution, Log and Event Manager, and that's going to take log management into the next realm and give a lot more focus on security and compliance and automation and various other things, as I said before. So before I witter on any longer, let's just break this up and have a look at a new poll. So what I'd be interested to see here is how often you review the data, because as I just mentioned, this is an interesting part that comes into it. Obviously, the more you're looking at log data, the easier, the more efficient you're going to want it to be. Okay, well, that's a clean sweep.
I'm beginning to think we should have rephrased the how many times you have issues that need log data requirements.
Yeah, but, okay. So hopefully you can see on the screen now that 91% only when an issue arises. So my initial feedback on that is in line with what we see to a degree. The problem with that is the fact that you're using trigger events to go and look at it. Maybe the fact that somebody's coming to you and asking questions, and you know that log data is a source. You know that there's an issue with something, and you review log data to see if that gives you any insights to understand root cause. Of course, absolutely. But being on top of log data and using it in a more proactive way, dare I say that word, it has a lot of benefits as well. And it'd be interesting, possibly as a follow-up, to see what the barriers behind using it in that way would be. So,
I think one question we've had come in through Andrew, and it might be worth chatting quickly about this, Mark, in terms of he's asked what size of business should companies consider when deciding between the options? So.
That's an interesting question. Is it size of business, or is it the way that you're using and the devices, the log sources that you have, the importance? So we have customers that are reasonably small, but because things like being attacked, usage of the website, access to systems is a business make or break situation, then obviously it has higher relevance. But we also see very large organizations that don't have effective log management, because in those circumstances, the security team have got the SIEM solution, the big powerful solution. And because that's so expensive, and because that has data in it that they don't want to share around,
they don't let anyone, doesn't it?
Yeah. They don't let anyone play with it. It's their toy, and there's big walls up.
Not that anybody in IT is like that, of course.
I don't know what you're referring to, Matt. So from that point of view, it's identifying those previous requirements. It's volume, it's the type of sources, and how you're going to use it. So I would very much suggest that size is kind of going to go below that.
Hope that helps, Andrew. Okay, let's move.
So I'm going to blast through these slides very quickly. I just wanted to use these as a foundation to highlight to everyone some of the key features in Log Manager for Orion. So some of this is the SolarWinds terminology with regards to their consistent use of unexpected simplicity. So everyone that's using Orion understands that SolarWinds are trying to achieve this panacea of ease of use, presenting very large volumes and complex information in simple to see screens. So that's carrying through to the log management interface as well. And we'll also see as we go through the demo how we can traverse and navigate through the screens to correlate log data, polling data, and make sense of everything that's there. And the reason they do this is because they do the job themselves. So the integration, you're seeing here a sample of a node details page. I'm going to show you a couple of ways that we have integration. The default way, and us extending that to include some custom resources. Now, in terms of log sources, I just want to be very clear on this. Log Manager is going to consume and allow you to send SysLog and SNMP traps. So from that point of view, this is very much a tool focused towards network devices. It does allow Windows event logs to be sent to it. SolarWinds have a utility, an agent that you can install that will allow you to send filtered messages out of your Windows event logs, and they get sent basically as SysLog messages into Log Manager here. And we also have a live mode. So the live mode, anyone that is a Linux bod that is used to doing a tail and various greps and all these kind of things on Linux log sources will fully appreciate the power of having the visibility of logs rolling in. So we'll have a look at that in motion as well. And one of the most important things here is searching and filtering. As I said, we're talking about millions and millions of singular events being sent to Orion every day, perhaps. And you're going to have something in between, but certainly that is the capacity. So from there, you need a way of efficiently navigating through that and trawling through and bringing those little bits of gold nugget to the surface, because without that, you've got no hope. And a part of that is an alerting structure that allows you to tag. So there are a number of pre-built ones. SolarWinds are clearly very aware of common things that are going to be an issue to highlight, but you can create your own. So we're going to take you through how to do that and how to use the tagging to really make it an efficient way of saying, okay, something's been received, we know it means this, I want to identify this much more clearly, and so tagging is a really powerful thing. And tagging clearly is used in many different platforms for that very purpose.
Here's the important bit.
Yes.
People drowning under alert storms.
Yeah, it's an inherent issue with any monitoring solution. So the original version 1 of Log Manager did not have great, I think it's fair to say, alert functionality. That has been very, very quickly addressed. So version 1.1, which was released recently, has the inbuilt ability to say, I've received an an event message in Log Manager for Orion. I now want to create an alert off of this in the engine of the Orion core. Now that obviously can work in isolation, but we'll also see how we can say, okay, we've got an event message, let's correlate that to polling data, let's reinforce the two, because as Matt says, this could be a really great way of controlling alert storms, i.e. events generating alerts that actually aren't actionable and aren't genuine. A couple of aspects with regards some background. So as I mentioned before, licensing, it is device-based, so nice and simple.
I mean, the license, just on that quickly, very much my area, in terms of the license limit from a SolarWinds perspective, it is only going up to 1,000 nodes at the moment. We'll probably talk about why that might be, Mark, in terms of that performance of the application, the database. Is there a reason, do we think, why that might be?
Yeah, so at the moment, the performance is set at around 1,000 events per second. And so from that point of view, SolarWinds are kind of suggesting that if you have more than 1,000, you're likely to be generating event messages beyond that. However, if customers do have more than 1,000 devices, but they're not generating more than 1,000 events per second, then we can work with them and SolarWinds to license higher than 1,000.
Okay.
In terms of configuration, as I mentioned before, this is SysLog SNMP trap data, so it is all about just configuring the necessary settings on the devices to send to the IP addresses. Now, any of the polling engines, so if you have multiple polling engines, then any of those polling engines can receive, and it will store it into a dedicated Microsoft SQL database server. So say, for example, you have your NPM license, SAM license, that is already using a SQL database. Log Manager, for efficiencies and control and scale and everything else, does require a dedicated database. This could be an instance on the same server, or it could be a dedicated server. But again, we can fully help with sizing and getting that scaled right and resourced correctly for your loads. Okay, so if we cut across now, let's go off of the slides and let's go and see some real data. So the first thing I need to do is just make sure I'm logged in still and we haven't timed out. There we go, we have timed out. Okay, so I'm going to kick off the demonstration here by showing you, in this case, one of our sample custom detail pages. So I'm looking at a checkpoint. So in our demo environment, we have a checkpoint firewall configured, and so we're monitoring it. We're seeing how many users are running through it, how many sessions are accessed. So all of this is very good for visibility on performance. One checkpoint model is going to have a certain capacity compared to another. So we need to get those kind of information. I want to see how many events are being blocked for IPS attacks or antivirus filters kicking in. And all of that activity that the checkpoint is doing and creating those kind of monitoring data values is also likely to be generating event messages. So what I've got here on the right-hand side is a custom query resource that I have written up. I'll show you the interface in a minute. And you'll see I'm simply just putting the date timestamp, the severity of the message, if there's any tags been defined for it, and what the message for. So within my node details page, I'm displaying my log data. I've got a search function up here, so if I wanted to search for a keyword, I can come in here and I can look at this. So let's do a keyword for failed, and you can now see this is searching through all of my log data and bringing me back my filtered information. So again, I've got clean visibility, I've got clean correlation, I've got my resource box with my event data sat side by side with my data that's telling me how much CPU, how many users I've got, what errors I've got in place. So that is something that we have added. If I just very quickly just show you the fact that we are using a not too complicated SQL query to bring that in. You can see we've got a case, so we can show an icon out, we can make it visual, and say this as a useful addition for display. The normal functionality here with regards to the integration is that we have this link to analyze logs. So when we are looking at this monitoring data, we can very quickly and easily click on this. This will take us through to the log viewer page. So this is the dedicated screen to review the log data that's flowing into Log Manager for Orion. And immediately, because I click that link, it's automatically added a filter. So efficiently moving through the interface, I can start changing time periods. I'll show you that in a moment. I can start adding further filters, but immediately I'm looking at the last, in this case, hour of log data. I can see the volume. I can highlight one of these. I can see on the right hand side that I've got extended information about that event message. And so this is very much a place to refer to and to bring additional information through to your understanding of what may be occurring in your environment. Now I'm going to cut across actually to the online demo. So I do strongly recommend that if you've not seen the online demo before, so I've highlighted at the top the URL. This is a publicly accessible site, and so you can go on in here and have a play and get a flavor for what Log Manager can do. So you can see, because the module is installed, I have it available as a link, and obviously by default it's going to have a fully unfiltered view. So from this point of view, I've got the position of seeing my event messages coming through. I've got my filters available on the left-hand side, and at the top I've got my histogram. So what I'm going to start off by showing here is the quick way that we can start filtering on this. So very quickly, we've got the different types. So is this coming through as a trap protocol message or a SysLog? The beauty of SysLog, and if you are using traps and SysLog, SysLog is our recommended protocol to use for log event management, because SysLog already contains every message a value according to the vendor's understanding or vendor's idea of the severity, that we can see that we can very quickly say, okay, I've got some error messages. Click on that and immediately get taken to a display where I've got a filtered view of only error message severity levels displayed. As I scroll down through these filter options, if I just minimize some of these, you've started to see the node names, IP addresses, but again, one of the big benefits of this, and what is not contained within SysLog data, is things like the machine time. So if I want to have a look and see all messages that are related to my security infrastructure, I can do that. I can see that I've got Cisco ASA. So all of my Cisco ASA firewalls, I can now say, show me that, and actually show me severity levels. Obviously, in terms of the demo, I might have important here, and I could put that as a filter. The filter structure is getting built up here, so at all times we can see the filter that's being applied to the content messages within the display. So just to confirm, log data coming in, Orion is correlating this to other data values that it has within its database, that in this case Orion NPM is collecting, and we're using or have the ability to use that within the left-hand navigation. Keyword searching. What we can see within this interface is a number of text items. So this is the content of the SysLog message. You can see that there's some kind of real-world readable content in here. We can pretty much make sense of most of the, and I say most, not all, let's be fair, of the messages coming in. So if I wanted to do, again, a search in here and look for keywords, So if I come in here and do a keyword search for fan or failed or BGP or anything along these lines, and you can see here. So from this point of view, I very quickly thought of a keyword which I think may be in there, or I know is going to be in the content of the search of the SysLog message or trap message. So I'm very quickly doing a filter. Now this keyword filter is going to automatically control the filter display on the left-hand side. So only content that is relevant is now going to appear in here. So say, for example, I did a search, and on this, if I do something which is going to have potentially lots of messages, I could look at that and go, well, I've got 6,000 messages I still need to navigate through, and that's going to be all time consuming. Well, no, as I say, you do a search on that keyword. You then can use the filters on the left-hand side. You can add to this. You can extend it to be narrowing down, whether that's by keyword, filter mechanism, or indeed the histogram at the top. So from this, you can see that we've got a histogram. Now, one of the things I always highlight in this is if you're seeing this kind of Manhattan view appear, and you suddenly see a big spike, there's a big tower here, you know immediately that there's been an increase in log data. So if I just change this to a different time frame. So here, for example, if I've got a low trend here, ignore everything on the right-hand side, I've got a trend here which is consistent to the volume of messages coming in, and then all of a sudden I've got a spike with a much bigger tower, and that continues. I know immediately that something has happened during this time window that needs investigation. And I can narrow down, and now I can start seeing, actually, it happened around this time, 5:55 in the evening yesterday. So from that point of view, this is just a visual clue to allow me to say, okay, why? I drill in, I set the time period so it's a bit cleaner, and now I can use the filters on the left-hand side, because it may be the fact that, as is the case here, we've got a particular device. So a real-world situation, I'd likely click on that device and start having a look at the type of messaging that's coming through. It may be generating log messages unnecessarily. There could be a configuration issue that does that. It could be the fact that it's under attack and it's doing things and it's generating more messages because of those scenarios.
I've got a question come in from Denmark in terms of, this might be related to this part. He's asking, is machine type data dependent on SNMP data being pulled?
Yes.
Does that make sense?
Yes. Okay. Yep, absolutely. Yep. So we get the fact that this is a Juniper SRX 100 firewall because we are monitoring a Juniper in NPM. When we start receiving syslog data from that device, it will correlate the two together, and so we know then that this is the device type, this is the vendor in question.
Perfect. Hope that helps, Dan.
Okay, so as I say, that histogram is a really powerful thing on its own. Even if you don't know why you're looking at log data, the fact that, as I say, you can see kind of visual trends in quantities of messages coming in will really be a route to navigate through. Okay, so from that point of view, I'm going to show you the live mode. Now, on the online demo, this isn't particularly interesting because it doesn't generate an awful lot of messages, and in our environment we don't have a continuous stream of log data coming in, but hopefully upgrade you can start seeing messages flowing in here. So what we often see with this, and the reason why people use tail in Linux to look at a log file, for example, is the fact that maybe something is going on and they want to see if it's continuing to happen. So perhaps they've seen that there's some OSPF issues, and they go through and they do some reconfiguration, and they want to see if that configuration slows down the processing of events being generated. Okay, live view immediately allows you to see that. It may be the fact that you're generating activity and you want to see the events that are occurring because of that. It may be the fact that you feel things are happening, lots and lots of reasons. So this, as I say, in terms of a live view, will continuously update as event messages come in. All of the search, all of the filters will continue to work. So you can see I'm interacting with the filters there. I took one off, but live mode is still running. So this is going to continually flow out messages to make my life nice and easy and straightforward. Okay, so I'm now going to drop across back to our internal system, because what I want to show you here is the fact that we can configure rules. Now, the rule area, as we'll see in a second, allows us to correlate through to the alerting engine, but also it allows us to, oh, not that one there. It allows us to see that we can create these tags. So out of the box, SolarWinds are providing a number of tagged entries. So you can see here that we've got one that's looking for a Cisco device having its configuration updated. So we're looking for this particular message, and we're going to add a tag config change. And there are a number down here, but we can create our own. We can say we want to look for certain activity. Maybe it's the fact that we don't run Cisco, we run a different vendor's hardware, and we want to have different rules for those. So what I've got here is a rule name. So if I do webinar, okay, so going to enable it. And this is very simple. This is a really easy process to go through. So you can see that we've got on our condition, could this come from any source, or are we going to specify that it comes from only certain devices? And we could put a rule in there that I'm only interested in ASAs perhaps compared to everything else, but I'm happy for this to be from any source. And I'm clearly not going to fire this for all log entries, so I want to make sure that I'm looking for particular things. So I want to do one for my checkpoint. I want to identify if somebody tries to log in and gets a login failure. So I know, having looked into this, that the keywords of user unknown is going to be something that is going to match the events coming out. If I do next, and actually here you can see that we can add multiple conditions here. So we can make this specific. In this case, I know a single entity, but I could have multiple and or statements. And then I come to the option to create an action. So out of the box, we have 3 functional actions, and we have a one at the end here with regards to stop processing. I'll explain that one in a minute. Now, the first thing you can see is this tag entry. If I configure that action, you can see that very quickly and easily, I can look at my library of pre-configured or previously configured entries. I've got login failure already there, but I could very easily create a new one. And I can say, this is the text that I want to display, and this is the color that I want to use. So I can give it a kind of severity and weighting aspect. So I'm going to choose done. But if I just go through and show you the other actions that we have available here. So execute an external program. This is very much about that inbuilt functionality that NCM has. So that because I mentioned previously the config change identifier. So if a device config changes, a syslog message will come out or a track message will come out. It matches the filter, and running an external program will link through to the NCM, the Network Configuration Manager tool, and trigger the functionality to go and do a download of the config. But this could be to execute a script that automates a remediation. It could be the fact that we are SSHing onto the box and making live changes. It could be many, many different things. Flag for discard. This, oddly, is one of the most commonly used. And the reason for that is volume. We've said it many, many times during this session. You're generating lots and lots, and a lot of that information is unnecessary. It's noise, it's stuff that has no value, and even if you saw lots of them in one go, it doesn't really say anything. So from that point of view, we don't want to store that in the database. We don't want to have it taking up space in the visualizations. So a lot of the alerts that we actually put in place for customers are discard rules, things like TCP teardown events. This doesn't give you anything. It doesn't add any value. It's taking up space. So we put a rule in place and we say, okay, when it comes in, don't store it in the database. And the reason that we have this stop processing rule is if we're doing that, then we're likely to stop processing further rules that we've created, because there's really no need. We've already said this is noise, this is rubbish. So don't then ask if it's a config change. Don't ask if it's something else, because it's not. Okay, so we're going to choose tag entry. And let's just, oh, I've done that already. Yep, and we're done. So that on its own would then bring in this functionality here. So if I just change that time period, this would bring in the functionality where we can utilize, oh, I've just realized that I need to be in here, that we can utilize tags, okay? But what we can also do is extend this and say, actually, I want to generate an alert in Orion. So over here, we've got the send rule to the Orion alerting engine. We could actually use this to generate a new foundation for an alert. So I could put checkpoint login failure alert. I could define some of the parameters, but what I've actually done already is created this just to speed the process along. You can see that I've got my name, I've got my description, I've got various other parameters that I could define in here. But the key thing here is the trigger condition. So you will see that there is a singular entry that says that this is a log manager event. And so we can say, yeah, the processing rule from log manager has the name of this. Okay, but what we can do with this is then add additional filters, and we can then correlate this to SNMP based data, so WMI based data, so other polling data that we are collecting from the environment. So now that alert control, the fact that we've got an interface has gone down. Okay, well, has an interface gone down, but actually does the log data say that it's been administratively shut down? That, to me, is then not an actionable alert. That means that somebody has actively gone through and shut that interface down, and therefore that possibly has a different issue compared to actually the interface has gone down, somebody needs to go and fix it. The rest of the alert configuration obviously will be exactly the same.
So Mark, so just interrupt you quickly there. I mean, we're doing a lot of obviously on-site services for customers where we're getting sometimes probably exposed to some of the log information that's coming through, and maybe ask some of the questions that, you know, that's prompted SolarWinds to bring this solution to the fore.
Yeah.
In your sort of opinion, based upon what we've seen over the last sort of 7-8 years, how does this affect the key question in terms of how quickly can issues be resolved now by having this log data correlated against performance? Is that answerable at all?
Yeah, I mean, the fundamental there is the more knowledge you have on what's going on in your infrastructure, the quicker you're able to understand how to fix it. So if you're, as I say, if you're looking at siloed information, that Orion NPM is saying that that interface has gone down, that there's been a BGP neighbor change. Well, in isolation, you might look at that and have a number of thoughts on what could be happening. It could be good, it could be indifferent, it could be the fact that somebody needs to get out of bed at 3 o'clock in the morning. Well, if you had further information that may be coming from event data, as I say, that says there's been a new BGP announcement from an upstream router, that gives you more information to understand what's going on. As I say, with the interface going down, if it's the fact that somebody is working on it, has shut it down specifically, then that tells you some information. So
I suppose that's the tagging part, isn't it? Just to tell you whether this particular event is a true issue that needs to be resolved, or perhaps not the tagging, but one of the issues, one of the areas can be to identify whether it's something that needs, you know, a real intervention at that time or not, I guess, is the key thing, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's all about, if you've got visibility of that information, if you've got these multiple sources of information, then an intelligent, efficient decision can be made on what you then do from that point. Okay. So what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to generate, so I'm going to call this webinar. So I'm going to log into my checkpoint. I created my rule. I'm going to do a login failure event. That's generated. Oh, sorry, my mistake. I didn't click on start live mode. So let me just do a refresh on this page. Sorry, my mistake in terms of showing off there. So here you can see I've got a login failure event. You can see that it's that time period, and usefully, it's not actually showing the event message itself. Have I brought the demo daemons to bear because I did it in the wrong order? It looks as if I have. Okay, great. So what we will be seeing when things catch up is the fact that there is going to be a tag on here, and that tag is going to obviously highlight the fact that we have predetermined that content that's going to come in on a SysLog message meets a filter, and that's going to bring it to our attention in this interface. It's going to bring it back to us within the node details page, for example. So if I just open that up again, I've forgotten what tab I was on. And so, as I say, multiple sources of data bring in all of this information. So, okay, so there we have it. So you can see the login failure event issue that I just mentioned. So log data, polling data, all in the same screen. Okay, so just going to go back to there.
So one of the things that we saw one of the previous slides was out of the box with Log Manager, its retention settings, Mark, in terms of the number of days. Obviously we know that that can change. We can probably set that to longer periods of times, but what are the considerations before we get into this part? What are the considerations we need to know whether we're going to extend that out beyond the 7 days, do you think?
Well, as you say, the default settings is that Log Manager is going to store for 7 days. Now we can change that. It's obviously dependent on the performance of the database. If it's more powerful, then we can extend it to more days. But hopefully everything that we've kind of demonstrated today, you're saying that this is kind of here and now. This is a monitoring solution. Something's occurring in the environment, somebody needs to go and fix it. It's not a solution that you're going to say, oh, well, Mary, don't say anything about that. We like using Mary in our demos. Was using her PC to go to nefarious websites, and she was sharing files that she shouldn't have done, and she did this 3 months ago. That's not what Log Manager for Orion is going to provide. Log Manager for Orion is network device focused. It's SysLog traps. If you want that functionality, then that's something that's going to be the SIEM solution and would be the Log and Event Manager platform.
Cool. Okay, it's poll time. This is probably once we wanted to be able to show you that sort of working in a live demo before we did this next poll, because hopefully that has now given you a bit of a flavour in terms of whether there's true benefits there. So let's launch poll 3. Let's get some feedback on that if we can. So the question obviously is whether you guys will benefit from having that side-by-side correlated data with the performance data. Oh, it's kind of overwhelming.
I would say so. 90% would suggest so.
And 10% saying, yeah, I'm not fussed, which is okay. But we can see obviously there that hopefully that proves that SolarWinds are sort of looking and listening and going in the right direction, because I'm sure I've heard stories of people spending a good deal amount of time sifting through log data in a different application to the monitoring solution that they've got. And I think the power of having that side by side, as we've mentioned here, is going to improve aspects of your jobs and make it probably a little bit less mundane, I guess. Looking through logs isn't not a nice task. Okay, so I think we've got time for a couple of questions, which is where we're at now, Mark, I believe.
Yep, just reviewing them at the moment. So one of the questions regarding there's kind of system requirements. Orion Log Manager when it's standalone, i.e. it is the only module that's installed, compared to what if you were to add this module to an existing Orion platform. So that really does depend. There are a number of factors. Certainly the log volume, the events per second rate is key. The amount of data retention, but fundamentally in terms of the servers, the application servers, there's very little change that needs to be made. If you are going to be generating up to the 1,000 limit, then we would suggest that maybe there's a CPU and a little bit of RAM that may need to be added. But as I said before, because the log data is stored in a dedicated SQL database server, therefore there is very negligible impact. If you are looking at putting, sorry, I was just going to extend that because obviously in terms of resources, standing up a dedicated SQL server may not be possible. Having the Log Manager database running on the same server as your existing core, that's perfectly possible. But again, it's all about the volume of events you're going to be generating. So in that circumstance, reach out to us and we can be more than happy to help. But all of those options are available.
Good stuff. I think pretty much we've answered the other questions as we've gone on, Mark, I think, which is always a bit of a benefit. So just a quick thank you very much, guys, for coming along. Just a couple of things. We do, after this webinar, send out a short survey to you all where we can get a little bit more feedback. It would be really, really grateful if you take it. Doesn't take long, probably 10, 20, 30 seconds max. If you could sort of answer some of those survey questions, it helps us sort of tailor our next webinars really, really nicely. The other thing to mention is this webinar has been recorded also. So if you want to push into Google at any time, Prosperon YouTube, you'll find all of the webinars that we've done over the preceding 6-7 months. And this one popped into there to have another review of if you wanted to have another look. So do spend some time there. Some other things on our Prosperon YouTube that you'll find of benefit too. We do have a blog article, I think, on Log Manager, Mark, on our website as well. Is that right?
We certainly do. Actually, if I just drop over to here. So, yep, on our website, if you go to Insight, Network Management, my recent blog post on the launch of Log Manager and just kind of highlighting some of its features and where it fits into the portfolio.
Perfect.
It's available on that.
And some other interesting blogs that we write from time to time, and others not so interesting. But most of the technical ones are very interesting. Okay, we're going to wrap things up now, everybody. Thank you very much again for attending. Thank you very much for participating in the polls. Again, please do the survey if you have the time. We'd appreciate that. And I mean, look forward to seeing you next time. Thank you very much.
Take care. Bye.